I think somebody else already
Great.
did that.
Yeah, recording has started.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you also for everyone, taking the time to be on the call today. We recognize how busy everyone is and how many calls you're on. So we just really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And of course, we hope that what we have to share is useful. I'm Kate Medina, and I'm joined by my colleague, Hannah Shoulder. We are, as Jessica mentioned, the founders of the Charles Coiner Conservancy for Urban Farming, formerly the Charles Coiner Center for Urban Farming. I think everyone can see the opening slide titled An Urban Ag Reserve. Everyone's got that? Okay, so what are we talking about? The Urban Ag Reserve, what is this? Today's conversation, it's really intended to be mutually beneficial, like Jessica said. There are these two simultaneous plans that are being developed. One, of course, is the county's master plan and the policy recommendations that will come out of this plan. And the second, albeit far lesser known plan, is our small land trust's conservation plan. As it was said, the Charles Coiner Conservancy, CKC, we currently manage and protect Coiner Farm, a 1-acre farm in downtown Silver Spring. However, we are working to create this network of urban farms, of neighborhood farms, or, as we've alluded to in the title here, an urban ag reserve. And so this conservation plan that we are developing will establish the criteria for how and where other urban farms should be created here in Montgomery County. And I think, Jessica, you mentioned the ag reserve, right? With the presence of this amazing 93,000 acre ag reserve, Montgomery County is already a national leader in land use policy that supports a local food system. However, despite this, Montgomery County's food system is not necessarily a leader in local food production. So clearly there's some piece of the food system that our county is missing. And we need policies that will help organizations like the Charles Coiner Conservancy and others connect those dots and build up those missing pieces so that our county can achieve a truly functioning food system, local food system. So that's really what brings us here today. And with that, I'll go ahead and I'll turn things over to Hannah, who she's also an urban planner. Her background is in affordable housing, and she's without a doubt the driving force behind Coiner Farm's protected status. She's also leading the charge in the development of CKC's conservation plan. So Hannah, it's all yours.
Thanks, Kate. Okay. Yeah, so just again to emphasize today, we just want to give you a little bit of background on our conservation plan and our organization. And then we really actually hope that the majority of our time today can be spent in conversation thinking about policies that can not only help you carry out Thrive, but help us together carry out the goals of Thrive. Okay, Jessica, can you advance the next slide? Cool. So yeah, you've heard now a couple pieces of the background of CKC farming, but just to give you a little bit of the personal story, maybe some of you know this old-time farmer, Charlie Coiner, but he grew up in Up County, Montgomery County, actually where Pike and Rose is. That was his old farm in Rockville. And he was a lifelong Montgomery County farmer. And at the later decades of his life, came to establish Coiner Farm in downtown Silver Spring. So we're really founded in his honor as we actually steward his property and manage his property now after his passing. Yeah, so again, just the personal side of it, CKC farming literally came about because we wanted to help preserve his farm. And then after his passing, someone needed to manage it. But then there was also this desire to use Coiner Farm and other sites like it to really be places of experimentation and training that next generation of sustainable food innovators. And so seeing the multiple benefits that Coiner Farm has brought to the surrounding neighborhood is really what inspired us to broaden the vision to CKC farming being a conservation land trust, helping grow a network of urban farms around our county. And can you just imagine how different things would be if everyone had a Coiner Farm in their neighborhood? So we're really here to help make that happen. Okay, so moving to the next slide, jumping into things. Kate and I just want to say we were so excited to see the Thrive goal, which really emphasized healthy local food. And to get started with achieving this goal, we thought it would be helpful to take a quick look at some statistics. As you can see, things in the urban farming category are kind of lacking. Officially, there is just Coiner Farm as the one, official defined urban farm. And so clearly there's probably some policy work that can be done to help bolster those numbers and really help us achieve that goal, agriculture integrated into our urban and suburban neighborhoods. And so while we totally recognize that just by having more urban farms, we're not going to necessarily have 100% local food consumption, we really think that urban farms play an important role at the systems level of the local food economy by connecting these different components that you see on the left. So in terms of the connection to the ag reserve, I feel like so many really, urbanites who live down county feel like that is just like such a different world and it's hard to make that connection. But those who come into contact with urban farms in their own neighborhoods, it kind of eases that transition and really makes it, through like actual connections that we can also provide our neighbors and our interns more tangible to have that connection to the ag reserve. And likewise on the personal scale, community gardens, backyard gardens, we at CKC Farming, as part of our education mission, hold workshops on our farm and help people really experiment with the latest ideas in agriculture and really empower them to do some of that experimentation then in their own gardens. So really, again, urban farms have this important role in creating that system. But on our next slide, Kate's also going to go into a little bit more detail about how urban farms actually are an integral part themselves, what they provide themselves, and actually how it relates to many of that Thrive's goals, even beyond food and food access.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thanks, Hannah. Yeah. So this slide, it's titled Thrive 2050 Vision and Goals. It simply lists out the goals of the county's master plan that stand to be supported by an increase in urban farm. As you can see from this list, urban farms impact 4 of the 7 goals. And while you're looking at this list, I would also just add that, there's a ton of literature out there on the impacts of urban farms. I think some of the best research has been done by the Johns Hopkins Center for Livable Future. But the general consensus among all this research is that the impact that an urban farm has on its community, it is extremely nuanced. And not only that, some of the most significant benefits of urban farms are very much forward thinking. Now, you guys are planners, so forward thinking is the name of the game for you guys. But, for me personally, it's that forward thinking, that consensus that urban farms, they may very well determine the future of food and how the next generation feeds itself. And that is a huge piece of the picture and what drives me. I'm a mom and I'm a former biology and environmental science teacher. So providing opportunities for the next generation to experience and understand nature, that's really paramount in my mind. And I would just say, probably at the most basic level, I just would love to see every child be able to experience their own Coiner Farm, because it truly is a very special place. I think at this point, Hannah and I would like to shift gears a little bit, because I could kind of go down a rabbit hole with that, but begin to shift gears and talk about how CKC intends to create this network of neighborhood farms, and how we intend to fill in those missing pieces of our local food system with maybe this, you could think about it like a microgrid approach to the food system. Okay, you can switch the slide. Thank you.
Okay, back to me. So as planners, this slide should hopefully excite you. Lots of fun mapping stuff going on here. So at CKC Farming, we're really just getting started with this conservation master plan, expanding beyond Coiner Farm. And for us, we decided to create, we would like to create a set of criteria to help us not just shoot anything that flies or anything that comes our way, but really finding the properties that make sense for our organization's mission and vision, and again, also helping carry out Thrive. So we would love, towards the end of the call to get some of your feedback actually on what's going to be presented in this slide in particular. So I just first off want to give a shout out to Chris McGovern. I don't see his name on the call. I could be mistaken though, but he helped us put together some of the base elements of this map that you see on the left. And so again, the idea is we want to be able to visualize different classes of land: private property, public, things that are owned by utility companies, and then again, layer our organization's priorities to see where there is overlap and then really consider those properties. Okay, so again, our organization has those 3 pillars and they're really all connected. Like we won't, I guess, go after a property that doesn't help us meet all of our goals within stewardship, management, and education. It's just an integrated thing for us. But just to go step by step, on the stewardship side, we want to find properties where there's already residents of that neighborhood who are interested and can kind of be the champions, because local stewardship to us is really one of the ways that this model is going to be, how it's going to be successful. And we'll get into that, I guess, on the next slide, just giving you a glimpse into our governance model. Public access. So as a land trust, this is really important to us. Whatever properties that we're involved in, people should be able to come onto the farm and enjoy it beyond, let's say for, with community gardens, it's just 10 people who have, the parcels there who are really feeling welcome. So we want to expand that out with the farms that we work on. And long-term preservation, this is definitely something we want to consider just because there's so much investment that needs to be made each time you create or help preserve a farm. So for us, this is matching property types, again, to specific policies and programs. So just a quick example, you see those blue squiggly lines. Those are the urban agricultural tax credit zones that you have to be within in order to qualify. So it's, I think, at like a half a mile from a metro policy center or something. So then, of course, for private property, we're only going to be looking potentially within those circles if the goal is to match and use the tax credit as one of our preservation policies. On the farm management and distribution of produce side, this is really where we get more into equity. So I think for us, one of the things we're interested in mapping is where there are food resources and where those are lacking in our county. Like where are the food deserts? So Chris was able to actually pull up a list of full service grocery stores and put their points on the map for us. So again, we will create that circumference around those points and see again where there are zones of need. At the same point, for us, it's really important in terms of the sustainability of this model to think about sales. We don't want to be so far flung that no one can find the farm and, we have to travel great distances to bring produce to market. So we also layer on here population density and again, have that as part of our criteria. And then finally, in terms of our education goals, again, really none of this, we don't just steward land to steward land. We don't just manage farms to, be producers. We do it all for the purpose of education and training the next generation. So for us, proximity to schools is, of course, going to be key. And like Coiner Farm, the best thing is that we are within walking distance of 2 elementary schools and a middle school. And pretty close to a few others, within a mile of a few others. So having those kids be able to walk over is so special. So it's not going to be like a make or break criteria for us, but proximity to schools and likewise then transit. Because if there's good bus lines that bring people right to the farm, that also helps. Okay, so that was a lot. And I'm sure we could talk about this for a long time. But Jessica, if you can go to the next slide. So just really briefly, Kate and I wanted to give you a sense of, okay, now we have this rubric for finding the ideal properties in our county. at least from CKC's perspective. But then what? How does it really work? So we wanted to just give you a glimpse into the governance model that we're also in the process of dreaming up. None of this is set in stone. So again, so happy to get your feedback today. But basically, CKC is proposing a network model because this is what we think will help get urban farms to scale in terms of the numbers and be a valuable contribution to that spectrum of the local food economy that we discussed earlier, having measurable inputs and outputs. So again, in terms of stewardship, we imagine having chapters of our nonprofit board in each location. Again, local stewards are the ones, the neighbors are the ones who are going to have their eyes and ears on the property looking out. We've got to involve them. That's just going to be the most sustainable way to do things. And even thinking about, as we continue to expand and having multiple farms, an election system that each of these chapters could bring up one person to the main land trust board. And again, we really feel like that's so important to changing our relationship to land when there's this collective sense of stewardship and collective sense of ownership. In terms of management, we also see a real important role for the neighbors of each of these farms. And at the same point, we know that what's sustainable is having some, at least skeleton structure of management to help support operations. So actually, I think this is similar to how the Parks Department manages the community gardens. And definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you have staff who help oversee and provide technical assistance. But then, of course, residents are, the ones doing the work in the garden. But for us, again, the key difference is that we want those opportunities to be open to everyone, not just like a finite number of slots. And then in education, so again, our main goal is to be connected to local schools and again, for field trips and then internships for like the older students. So CKC definitely could be providing a role in connecting the schools to the different farms. And actually, right now, we've actually started working with MCPS on creating a curriculum to help expand their, hands-on side of their education. So CKC could be providing that centralized curriculum that goes out to each of these different sites. Okay, I think that's it on governance.
Okay, you want me to do financial?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Hannah, for addressing the governance model. So here, we're just going to kind of do a very sort of high-level, brief overview of our financial model. On the right, you see, we've created this little gear depicting sources and uses. Those are in no way sort of a one-to-one ratio. That's intended to be showing the inputs and then outputs in general. I'd say like the main takeaway from this slide here is that as a nonprofit farming operation, we are able to diversify our revenue opportunities in ways that for-profit farms cannot. And so, of course, this makes our operation more adaptable to the many challenges. We all know that farms, the financial threats to farms are not lacking, are many. I'd say one other takeaway that I want to mention here is that, this idea of shared revenue. So we can look at this from a couple examples. One example is you take Coiner Farm. The revenue from Coiner Farm, which is this established farm, could be used to help start up the next farm. Or another way of thinking about shared revenue is to say, let's take a farm that maybe we've been able to create in Bethesda or Chevy Chase. We would have the opportunity to recruit donors from the Bethesda farm and recruit sponsors from the Bethesda farm that could in turn support farms in, Paint Branch or White Oak. This is really important because right now I don't think anyone can deny that one of the issues of our food system is equity. Right now, only those who can afford, let's say, the farmers market prices or have access to getting out to the ag reserve, those are the ones who are participating in our local food system. And therefore, those are the ones reaping the benefits of clean, quality produce and food. That said, I can't stress enough that the work being done by organizations like Crossroads, Crossroads Community Food Network, Farm to School, and others is so critical. These organizations, they're partners of CKC, and we want to bring them even greater value. So as a mission-driven organization, we're able to prioritize high quality produce that is not only sustainably grown, but is also affordable and accessible to those in need. So I think that's the message here, and I'm going to kind of stop there. And Hannah and I, we thought it would be relevant and useful to share with you our model, because ultimately you will be the ones recommending the policies that will enable CKC and others to do the food system work that needs to be done. And I would just add that I feel like Montgomery County is primed for this sort of a food system revolution, if you want to call it, or changes. It feels like the right pieces are in place, the right players are in place, and I don't know, I guess you could say that they just need the rules of the game. Maybe, I don't know, to continue with that analogy. I don't know if that analogy works, but I know that the public is definitely looking to its leaders right now to see how they respond to everything that's going on today in this world we live in now, and to see how they will make sure that Montgomery County is prepared and able to feed ourselves when, unfortunately, pandemics and climate changes are a real and present threat. But I really don't like to be like a doom and gloom environmentalist. So I would say that the silver lining here in all of this is that possibly unlike other counties, it feels like Montgomery County, we're not starting from scratch. We've really got one of the strongest local food system foundations upon which to build that you can find in the country. We just need to fill in some of those missing pieces and to help those pieces work together. So yeah, I'm not saying that it'll be easy. There will definitely needs creativity and some tough decisions. But we're hoping to take that first step with you all today by brainstorming some of these policy recommendations. So you can go ahead and switch the slide if you don't mind, Jessica. Okay.
Great. Okay. Yeah, and just to, again, emphasize what we've talked about so far, hopefully we've convinced you that this model for urban farming not only works, but it's sustainable, financially sustainable, and then also in terms of its governance and how it works kind of in concert with these other elements of our local food economy. But yeah, Kate and I really just wanted to open things up at this point. We've got a nice chunk of time left to really brainstorm with you the policies to support this kind of work. And just to get us started, we put a few things here on the slide that in our experience look like potential opportunities. So for example, with the private single-family residential or even some of the multifamily residential properties, some of them can qualify for the urban tax credit, which our county council passed a few years ago. But if you look at it right now, it's still only, like 3 years later, still only Coiner Farm who has qualified. And we do know of a few other farms who have tried and been denied. So the requirements are really stringent. Unlike, I think, DC and PG County that have, it's a much more kind of supportive set of rules. So it just might be something, one of the policies that already exists that might just need some tweaking. On the private commercial side, and again, sometimes multifamily dwellings, oftentimes there's requirements for open space. Again, from my experience, like I've worked on those sites, and yet, as I remember, like many sites are just kind of dead spaces, like these courtyards that just meet the requirement. But what if there was an incentive program? Maybe there is, someone please tell me, but to activate these open spaces. And maybe not everywhere, but maybe sometimes it makes sense for there to be some farming activity going on in there. And, if we pair it with CKC's governance model and finance, kind of, again, what Kate was saying about the shared revenue, no one has to like recreate the wheel and figure it out themselves. Maybe it's possible to bring some farms to those sites as well. In terms of public land, this is something we would love to hear more about from you, but sites that are owned by the county, can we identify together some that might, again, fit either whether it's CKC's criteria or other criteria that would be ideal sites? And then considering whether additional layers of protections necessary, just again, from our experience, and again, maybe we don't understand the full situation, but with the community gardens, it appears that the use is interim, and that if some developer comes along with, the right price, it could change. So, if we want to achieve Thrive goals, and if we want farmers to really invest in the land, we need to think long-term how to protect those assets. And likewise for public-private partnerships, here we're really talking about land where there's Metro, WSSC, Pepco. We've had some initial conversations with Pepco, and they say, hey, we've got substations in every neighborhood. These would be ideal sites. We can't develop them, we can't build on them, but we could probably farm on them. So is there an opportunity to get long-term leases and kind of have that be systematized, so it's not, each neighbor having to fight the fight themselves? So those are just a few things we wanted to throw on the table, and would love to enter into dialogue with y'all.
Thank you.
Do you want us to just speak up when we have something to say, or I don't know how to raise my hand?
You tell us.
That's great.
Okay. Hi, I'm Suzanne Paul. I am a park planner and analyst on the park planning team, and I'm the person who wrote the comment in the comment tab that I'm currently managing a site suitability study for new community garden locations of a variety of scales on Parks Department owned land. So this is a study that established a set of criteria to use as an analysis in GIS, and then come up with a list of potential sites and then narrow them down. And I'm doing this in conjunction with our Community Gardens Program Manager, Michelle Nelson, who you may know, hopefully know.
Yeah.
And she is on this call as well. But we'd love to set up a time to talk with you additionally about some of the work that we've done and the data sets that we've used and developed that could be helpful to you, and some of our shorter term and longer term goals, which are quite ambitious.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you we'd love to see that, because like we said, the community gardens, they've really been an inspiration for so many people. I know that there's a waiting list. They're so popular to get into many of these community gardens. And so there are people out there that want to get involved with this. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I don't know if Michelle wants to jump in at all. I don't think our community garden sites on our parkland could be, I would hesitate to call them interim uses on our land. They are when they get built, they become an established, Parks Department facility, and they wouldn't be subjected to, turning into a new development or whatever. But I know that's not necessarily the case on HOA property or other, privately owned land. So.
Yeah. Okay.
There were a few other questions in the chat, and so maybe I can run through some of those. And one was, I guess the first question was, how many acres in the ag reserve produce food that is consumed in Montgomery County, and if that analysis has been done?
I can't answer that myself. I've tried to find that information as well. So if anyone knows.
But from our Big Ideas talk, Kate, with you all in January, I think there was some general statistic, just like that general idea that, yeah, many of them are not producing food, they're producing hay and other products. And wasn't there a statistic that it was only 2% of our food, the food we consume in our county, is coming from within the county? 2%, was that? Anyone remember?
Well, that might be an area of future research for all of us.
Yeah, you might be able to get, this is Tina speaking, somebody like Carolyn Taylor or Lauren Greenberger, they would probably know the answers to these questions pretty easily. Heartbeat.
So the next question was if you're looking at opportunities on private land, or are you also looking at public land, schools, parks, and other public land, which I think you answered, through the discussion. But do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. Or maybe, Charles, is there, now that you've heard the presentation, do you want to also is there anything else that you want to ask about that? Because yeah, we could just law on and on.
Well, sure. I work with Suzanne, so I'm looking at it from a countywide park planning perspective. But we're also looking at, I'm part of the general plan team, so we're thinking about ways that, thinking out of the box, ways to grow different innovative ideas. And I think one of the ways that you could do it is looking at other types of public land, not just parkland and schools, but other types of public land that are owned by other county agencies or even federal agencies for that matter. There's a lot of big federal campuses in Montgomery County that probably have some land available for this type of activity. And maybe as a 501c3, you might be more positioned to take advantage of those opportunities.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a good tip. We've also been in conversations with master gardeners, for example, and I know that certain master gardeners have tried when it comes to utilities, operating there, or other opportunities. So, we're not the only ones thinking about this. You guys, you guys are thinking about this, and other organizations. But hopefully, with everyone's sort of powers combined and minds combined, get the conversation started, we can continue to capitalize on those opportunities, Charles, like you recommend.
Could I ask a question about that? Have you looked into church land? Because I've seen, one of the things that I'm very interested in is converting a lot of the lawns that are out there into more viable habitat areas or, less inert pieces of land. And there are there's got to be thousands of acres of lawns that are owned by churches and I was wondering about that. And you may even have, church members who would be interested in helping with that.
No, we have thought about that also. There is this one weird little glitch, but I don't think that it will impact, CKC, as we are a 501c3. A church, as a nonprofit, they can't have a for-profit entity operating on their property and benefiting from that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So that's just what it is. But a nonprofit farm, and that's really the pitch that we're spinning. The nonprofit model for producing food offers more opportunities and is more adaptable.
Yeah. Thank you. There's so much potential there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. The church sites. And then, since we have all these planners on the call, Kate and I are still confused, no matter how much research we do. Metro, Pepco, WSSC, what is the ownership structure, and is it different for each of those?
Yeah, I'll just say in a previous job that I had, this is Suzanne again, I feel like they all have their own kind of rules and regulations about their land and how it's used. I mean, in a previous job was trying to establish a farmer's market set up at the Noma Gallaudet station down in DC, and there was just huge hurdles around rules, you can't have food on WMATA property and so on. So I think there's just these pretty entrenched rules and regulations that aren't super flexible necessarily. Not to say they can't change, but they do have their own sort of challenges to first figure out and then work around.
But it's not as if those are county-owned parcels.
So one thing that's fairly
those are different. Those are different landowners than say Montgomery County Department of Parks or MNC PPC or MCPS and so on.
Yeah. Okay.
And pertaining to the power lines, we want to really work with Pepco, but they've been very resistant on, one of the ideas is to put solar panels in the right of way as well, because that's just a perfect opportunity and place for it. They have a lot of problems with maintaining access, and then they like to do whatever they want in there whenever they want. I think the doors are open for further conversation, but it has been, very challenging working with them.
Other questions or comments?
This is Suzanne again. Sorry to hog the mic. As one of our key data sets that we used in our community gardens study that so far has been the food insecurity data from the Food Council. So I think that's a really helpful layer to add into whatever mapping that you're doing. And I'm happy to set up a separate call with you and just sort of like walk you through the steps that we went through and what we're looking at. But we're using that once we identified suitable sites, we're using that to prioritize where we would build new community gardens first in order. I'm also working on the general plan. I'm a part of the equity working group and working on the mapping of new equity or formally establishing equity areas in the county as part of the general plan. So that's like obviously a big component of the work that we're doing.
Suzanne, it'd be awesome if we could set up a side call to get into the nitty gritty mapping, and also just to make sure, like, we don't want community gardens and urban farms to be in competition, and they shouldn't be. They're offering different pieces of that, bigger picture. So yeah, just working together would be great.
Sure.
Hi, this is Khalid. I don't know if you've already mentioned that, and apologize if you mentioned I missed it. Is there a minimum property size or lot size you're looking for when it will be suitable, and below that is not suitable for urban farming?
Yeah, good question. So the Montgomery County Urban Ag tax credit defines a minimum of a half an acre.
Quarter acre.
Yeah, as soon as I said that, I kind of paused. I was like, a quarter acre. And so I think that we would want to be in line with something that has been produced by the county in terms of our minimum property size. Now, that said, at Corner Farm, the full acre is protected, but we're actively farming on about 1/10 of that with all of our garden beds. However, the whole entire property is still used for the farm. We have bees there, so we have clover planted and natural areas, wildflowers. So we do use the whole farm for farming purposes.
Okay.
Yeah, but as we call it, it's a good question, because if you, on that last slide, when we're looking at different properties by their ownership structure, I think, of course, that 0.25 makes sense when we're looking at private residential property, so that we can use the tax credit whenever possible. But again, if there's a multifamily property, again with those open space requirements, and it's as Kate said, really on the farm, it's 0.1 of the acre that has like real produce on it. So yeah, maybe we could go smaller depending again on the property and what type of policy we're using and leveraging. And also happy for your feedback if you have ideas as well.
No, thank you. Thanks. I was looking at the possibilities of, I don't know, with other projects, or whether multifamily property owners have been receptive to the idea. I don't know if you have approached them to use some of the required or not required open space. As you said, there is sometimes open space, and whether they will be willing to, partner with you in some areas.
I would also say, we actually haven't approached any property owners yet. We have been approached by other property owners, but we haven't approached any ourselves, because we wanted to create our plan, figure out what is our criteria. And so we're at the very beginning stages of saying, if we were to approach somebody, who would it be, and how would we go about doing that, and why? So thank you for these ideas.
This is Tina again, and I also want to apologize for hogging up the airspace, but I have a question for you, for you and maybe the planners as well on here. we're entering into a master plan right now for Silver Spring, downtown Silver Spring. And I'm wondering if there's any precedent for saving land aside for agriculture in master plans. If you know anything that's been done similarly throughout the country, are there any examples to that? And if we were to think about that, how would we do it? Would it have to be tied to parkland, or could it be tied in some other way? Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Kate, what was the study that you're looking at in Detroit? Was that with their county planning department, or was that like a private organization? Kate, are you speaking? You're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. Sorry, I was speaking, but I was muted. Are you talking about the ones that I just passed along just recently about like sort of the ag communities, the developers in these ag communities? And yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah. I don't know if that's like exactly what Tina is asking about. What about the one in Santa Monica, California? Santa Monica, right?
It's not citywide. Yeah, if you look at Pittsburgh has a lot of vacant parcels around, after the crash, 2009 crash they did. So there was an effort similar, I think, to what we're doing here, of a nonprofit farming organization. And actually they weren't a land trust themselves, but they partnered with the regional land trust, joint partnership to do a citywide plan. But yeah, again, maybe even they weren't working with the county planning department. Anyone else planners have insight on this?
I don't have I haven't done a lot of research on community land trusts in this regard, but I know certainly for housing, a similar model, it's just, it could be a mechanism for securing and protecting land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the CLT model is actually what, Kate and I were describing in the governance, is having, that 2/3 resident majority on the board. Yeah, so it's definitely, something we're thinking about for agriculture as well. But good question, Tina. We should follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, this is Jessica again. I'll just jump in to say that this has been really helpful in terms of taking ideas that the group has talked about and thinking about what policies we might need to tweak or add, or even where there are opportunities to sort of take policies that are in existence and think about how we can sort of improve or connect to agriculture. And I think you mentioned two of them. One is the urban ag tax credit, but also we do have the CR, commercial residential public benefit points, and there might be an opportunity there for us to look at if we could add, as an incentive, urban agriculture for sort of that multifamily mixed use commercial style development. And so I think that like this has been really helpful for me in terms of like you guys as the experts kind of helping us figure out how we can take ideas into action. And so thank you so much for that. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Hannah or Kate?
I see one coming across. Oh, on the Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah. Any closing thoughts?
This is Steve Findlay. Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, Steve.
Thanks for being here. I got a reference recently from our friends at MCDEP that I'm just now trying to look into. Time has been tight, but it's the concept of resiliency hubs. And the resiliency hubs are community-based centers that help to make sure that basic needs are met, and there's preparedness to meet basic needs in terms of emergencies and things like that. And it includes food, shelter, water, and it seems to kind of pull together a network of different, community groups and community centers and so forth and so on. So just as I'm becoming acquainted with that, it occurred to me to wonder whether the concept of urban farming and an urban farm network and community gardens could even be woven into a resiliency hub concept. Like I said, I haven't had time to fully explore the concept myself, but there are websites that have information dedicated to promoting the idea of resiliency hubs. It's an interesting notion.
That is Steve, that is an interesting notion, and I like the idea of these, like the hubs, because a lot of what Hannah and I think about in terms of this network are what are some of the outputs that a community has that are currently either going to an incinerator or in some way being wasted, that an urban farm can actually help recycle those and reduce that waste. And then at the same time, what are the community needs, and how can an urban farm connect to those needs? So it really is sort of this cycle to keep the resources within the community, and keep the community sustainable and resilient.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. We'll look into it because, yeah, if there are resources attached with this concept, or again, policies that would be helpful, yeah, we'll definitely look into it. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks as well. Even just this last slide of the brainstorming, already you've given us so much insight into our own little questions. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time, and we hope we can continue the conversation as you continue with your recommendations and policy work as well.
Yeah. And also, here in the chat, there's so many great ideas from MCPS and Community Food Rescue I saw coming through, and others. Like I said, we're just beginning to scratch the surface of the opportunities, and there's already so much great work being done, which is what I was really trying to stress, and just sort of linking it all together. Anyways, thank you all very much for your time. We really appreciate it, and for your brainstorming ideas.
And when conditions get better, please come visit us at Coiner Farm. We'd love to have you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been really great. And the timing, I wish we would have been able to meet in person, but we're grateful to you that you were able to make the time for us today. So thanks so much. And we will, once we have a link of the recording available, we can share that with you. And I will send out that along with the slide deck.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.